Hey guys, Jason here, Jason's 310. I have a story to tell you, a story about risk management, a story about stacking the cards in your favor when you're flying a twin. Every twin pilot's worst nightmare is engine failure, especially right at the most inopportune time, right as you're breaking ground, lifting off. There's some things that you can do to stack the cards in your favor as a twin pilot. You can keep your weight down. You can take off in cooler temperatures if density altitude's an issue. Or you can take off from a longer runway, and that's just exactly what I did this summer and the story that behind this. So we had some friends from Europe, fortunately skinny Europeans with their teenage kids, come into town. And we did an overnight trip to San Antonio. So there's 6 in the airplane. And this is an example of where I chose to fly the airplane over to a nearby airport with a longer runway as a risk management strategy. So I'm based at West Houston Airport, obviously on the west side of Houston, hence the name. It's a 3,900 foot runway, paved, flat, but with obstacles on both ends, trees. And the trees are not right at the threshold, but they're close. There's probably 1,000 foot overrun roughly to the south, departing to the south on runway 15 at West Houston. Just a few miles further west is Houston Executive with a nice long 6,600 foot runway. It's out in the prairie land along the Brazos River Valley, flat as a pancake, no trees, nice flat overruns on each end of the runway. So here's what the weight and balance for this flight looked like. The airplane has an empty weight of 3,511 pounds. Myself and my front seat passenger are 400 pounds. Most of that's me. The middle row are 2 skinny European adults at 325 pounds. And the aft row are their teenage children, 13 and 17 years old, for a total of 250 pounds. It was just an overnight trip, so we had 50 pounds of backpacks in the wing lockers and 70 gallons of fuel. There were 30 gallons in each tip tank, and then there's roughly about 5 gallons of residual fuel in each inboard wing tank that I keep those bladders wet, so I keep a little bit of fuel in there. So that's 420 pounds of fuel. So total ramp weight of 4,956 pounds. Maximum gross allowable takeoff weight is 5,300, so we're about 350 pounds below gross weight for this airplane, which is why I love this airplane. It'll haul a lot. I haven't showed the center of gravity. I will note that the center of gravity is near the rear limit, but I didn't notice any kind of untoward handling characteristics. The airplane handled great. The weather for Houston Executive that morning, it was August 26 for 7:30 a.m. takeoff. It was calm winds, 6 miles and mist, clear skies, temperature 25, dew point 25, altimeter 29 So the temperature was about 77 degrees Fahrenheit, 25 Celsius. Note that it was misty, and also the temperature and the dew point spread are nil. The temperature and dew point spread is 0. So it's very humid. And that's typical for Houston in the summer here. It's just incredibly humid and uncomfortable. So the density altitude is 1,250 feet with those numbers. That's not exceptionally high, obviously. So the density altitude really isn't an issue. But this is an excerpt from a Flying Magazine article on their website. All the density altitude formulas assume 0% humidity. And if you look what I've highlighted below that, after you complete your normal calculation, add the following percentages to density altitude to correct for humidity. For sea level, add 32%. So if you do that, the density altitude with a humidity factor added is about 1,650 feet. So the humidity is not actually that bad, but the density altitude is not that bad as a number, but I can just tell you from personal experience that my airplane, and I'm sure everybody else's airplane here in Houston really suffers in the humidity. You can feel it. I can't put a number on it, but it just really becomes sluggish on these hot, humid days down here. So here's my route of flight. So I was dropped off by my passengers at West Houston Airport early in the morning, about 6:30. They drove the car on out to Executive. I got in the airplane and flew over to land on to the south on their runway there, and it was just a quick 7-minute flight. So we loaded everyone up and we departed. And here's my 4-flight track log. And if you look about where we broke ground, it's roughly 2,600 feet down the runway. So you might be thinking, well, Jason, why didn't you just take them out of West Houston? The runway there is 3,900 feet. You've got plenty of space there. Well, it's not the takeoff distance I was worried about. It's what happened if I had an engine failure. It's the accelerate stop distance. So let's look at the book figures for this flight for the accelerate stop distance. So with the temperature of about 77 Fahrenheit at sea level at our weight, we're looking at an accelerate stop distance of 3,100 feet. The sense check is that's just inaccurate. As I just mentioned, we used 2,600 feet of runway to break ground, and the manual with a test pilot, professional test pilot, is saying 3,100 feet. So basically I'd have to recognize a problem right as we broke ground, chop the throttles, and stop within 500 feet. There's no way that's possible. One quick note is those numbers are from the POH are from a professional test pilot, a Cessna pilot back in the day, and he probably broke ground at a slower speed and used a more aggressive takeoff profile than I do. I tend to prefer energy over altitude, so I tend to keep the airplane on the ground to a bit faster speed. So I'm estimating the real world, quote unquote, accelerate stop distance to be at least 4,500 feet. So if you go back to West Houston Airport, if I had a problem, and really assuming no startle factor, I'd basically have to immediately chop the throttles and start applying heavy braking. 4,500 feet would take me off the end of the runway, across a ditch, across a road, and into the field at the end of the runway. So why did I choose to do this? Why did I choose to get dropped off and fly the airplane over to airport with a longer runway? Well, it's just for safety, for risk management. As you can see here, even if we lost an engine 100 feet up in the air, if you look at the red arrow, I could still chop the throttles and just gear up into the pasture at the end of the runway, and we'd all walk away. A better scenario would be I would be able to I'd have enough energy that I'd be able to get the engine feathered and we'd be able to climb out, of course, but this is worst case scenario. So I hope this has been useful for you. It's just an example of how a thought process that you need to think about when you're taking off with a lot of passengers in either hot and heavy or high and heavy conditions, and you just need to think about risk management and how to stack the cards in your favor. Thanks for watching.